Hello friends, this is Worm, the Doom Slayer, here today to talk about Solar Warlock and what we can do about it, the mini-series where we talk about every subclass in the game and what we can do to make it better or not so good in the Crucible. And of course, we have Solar Warlock in front of us today. Now, I will be the first to admit, Solar Warlock is not a class I play a lot of. No, well, hold on, take that back. I play a lot of Solar Warlock, but I use a very, very specific build, which is the build you're actually seeing here in the first game, which is like a healing build slash support build, right? But I don't play much outside of that. So my knowledge here is a little bit more limited. I have played other builds into Warlock, flying builds and stuff like that, just not as extensively as I have other subclasses in the game. So I just want to start that out right there. So if something sounds absolutely out of whack, maybe that's the reason why, but I don't think anything's going to really sound out of whack here today. So let's talk about Solar Warlock and the changes that need to happen. And I want to start off with some big buffs here to the overall aerial effectiveness of Solar Warlock. Now, of course, I was playing Solar Warlock today. Again, not this game, the second game, and I think the third game too. But I found that while in the air, my airborne effectiveness, combat effectiveness, was not really that great. And I was looking at what was causing it to be bad, what was causing it to be rough. Was I out of range of enemies? Was I just being goofy? Was I blah, 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 doing all this stuff? And sometimes, yeah, I was taking shots that I had no business shooting. But there were other times when there were some specific instances of things like recoil and the downward drift while heat rises is active that really threw me off. And I know that top tier PvP players have probably mastered Solar Warlock and can handle these situations, like these aspects, better than most. But I think that it's ultimately makes Solar Warlock a little bit more difficult, and it has a little bit of a higher skill ceiling, to master than others. And we would like to bring that skill ceiling down. That way more players can easily utilize the Solar Warlock kit in terms of heat rises and being in the air. So the first thing that I really don't like is the downward drift that you get while you're in the air. Of course, heat rises, you can activate your grenade, float up in the air, and as long as you get kills while you're in the air, it'll extend the duration of heat rises. And while you're in the air, you get plus 70 airborne effectiveness, which is fantastic. And you get slower, you don't come down quite so slow, right? You still fall slowly, to the ground, but you don't, go up, peak, and then come back down. And if I'm not mistaken, I've done it in PvP a couple times, but if you go up in the air and you don't move, like you just jump straight up and you don't move, it will actually suspend you there forever. At any rate, when you're in the air, I found it very, very difficult to maintain aim while strafing, left and right to avoid, shots, stuff like that, and slowly floating down. Like it made the actual act of using this very difficult to pinpoint on a target, right? And you'll probably see that in the next game. Like you'll see that I had a lot of difficulty staying on target when I'm in the air, and that's including when heat rises is active, because there's some gameplay here where I was in the air and heat rises wasn't active, right? And you can tell that it wasn't active because I was not doing great at all. But even when heat rises was active, it was frustrating because that downward drift, that slow downward drift, is really, really jarring to a player who, again, doesn't play this very often, right? And I know that at the high end of PvP, it's not an issue, but again, for more casual players or for players who don't play it very much, I think that this should be changed. How would I change? I would say that when you're aiming down sights while heat rises is activated, you actually don't float down, right? As like if you're aiming down sights, you will stay at level. You can still strafe left and right, blah, 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 stuff like that. But it doesn't actually cause you to lower on your, cause your height to get lowered. A trade-off I guess you could potentially have with this is when you're aiming down sights, the timer ticks down faster. I don't know how Bungie would implement that, right? But the timer ticks down faster because obviously if you're aiming down sights, you got 10 seconds on heat rises. You can stay, as long as you're drifting, ADSing and drifting back and forth, stuff like that, you can stay in the same spot, which completely nullifies Wings of Sacred Dawn. We'll talk about that in just a second though. But I feel like it would be beneficial for Bungie to allow Warlocks to just stay in the air, again, as long as they're aimed down sights, right? And you know what? Go a step further. Aiming down sights and strafing. Like if you're aiming down sights and holding still, you're going to start drifting down. But if you're aiming down sights and you start moving left to right, you don't drift downwards anymore. You'll hold your position. And that would make it just a little bit easier for, again, new Warlocks or non-Warlock mains, whatever you want to call it, to build into heat rises, right? Because heat rises is all about the what did Bungie call it last week? Yesterday, sorry, the orbital weapons platform, right? The orbital weapons platform. You're in the air, you're shooting, blah blah blah, you know, all this stuff. But when it's difficult as all heck to hit those shots, it can be very frustrating. So I think that would be a pretty decent buff. I don't think it would be too broken. Again, the fantastic players that have mastered this class, it's only going to benefit them a little bit more. But the reality of it is 90% of us are not coming in contact with those top tier players, right? Like those players that are sitting, you know, miles above your ELO, right? It's very rare that we come across those. I think that this buff would help, you know, players tremendously in terms of the building into that orbital weapons platform. Now, the second idea I had for heat rises, and this is a much smaller buff, but I think one that still should happen. When you consume your grenade to activate heat rises, you should get more than 10 seconds of aerial time, right? I think it's wild that you only get 10 seconds, because you get 10 seconds, you know, let's say you're on the ground, you activate it, you float up in the air to your highest point, right? Your, what is it? I can't even remember what it's called, but you know, your highest point, you float out. By the time you're up there, I mean, you're already only at like 6 seconds left on your timer. And if you don't get a kill, it doesn't extend the timer at all. I think that at minimum, Warlock should get 20 seconds of heat rises when you activate your grenade, right? Because consuming your grenade, that's a big deal, right? Like that's a big trade-off. And yeah, heat rises, it's cool to get up in the air and to get that, you know, that advantage or whatever you want to call it on people. But I think the timer's still too short. Even if you are at the peak of your jump and then you activate it and you can, you know, you save some time, it's still only 10 seconds. I think it just needs to be more. I think at least 20, maybe at least 15. I would say 20 is optimal. I think more than 20 is probably kind of pushing it, but at least at minimum 15, 20 I think would be the fair amounts, you know. And then in PvP, every kill you get extends it by like 10 seconds, right? Because again, how often are you going to be getting PvP kills while you're floating in the air? Like, it's not PvE. You don't have hordes of ads rushing you, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think 10 seconds per kill would be fair, which I don't know what it is right now. Like, I don't know how many seconds you get added to heat rises when you get a kill now, but I think 10 seconds would be fair if it's not like that already. So yeah, those are the two buffs that I would make for Solar Warlock in the Crucible, just again to help lower that skill ceiling so that players that build into Solar Warlock can utilize the aerial combat effectiveness without having to suffer, you know, poor aim, you know, a controller aim, old controller boy here. But yeah, the next change I would make is actually a nerf to Solar Warlock, and this one is, I think it's a fair nerf, right? For a couple of reasons, and we'll talk about them in just a second. But currently, I do not think that it is okay that Warlocks can run away from a fight while on the ground and be the fastest, most mobile subclass in the game, right? Currently, if you are a Solar Warlock and you start running away from a fight, you can activate Icarus Dash, and it gives you momentum that you can actually carry with you and essentially skip across the ground, right? No other class in the game can catch you. Not Stompy's Hunters, not, you know, Dune Marcher Titans with shoulder charge stuff. No other class can catch you. And I think that is not really building into the idea of an aerial, you know, unit, right? Running away from a fight while you're on the ground. I don't agree. So what I think Bungie should do is I think they should remove the momentum burst you get when you actually Icarus dash. So when you're running and you jump up in the air and you Icarus dash, you don't get, you know, especially well, even if it's perfectly timed, blah blah, like no, like you don't get a momentum boost. Like once that Icarus dash is over, you are moving, or you touch the ground, you move at normal Guardian speed. You can't just immediately touch the ground, skip and jump into a burst. Like, you know, it's Warlock skating essentially. You know, back in Destiny 1 we had Titan skating. Titans were the fastest fastest class in the game by a long shot, because Titan skating was insane. Took it out in Destiny 2. I think that the same thing should be done for Icarus dash. Now, that obviously somebody's going to disagree with it, I'm sure. And I know that it's not necessarily an easy feat to do, right? On controller, it's a lot more difficult to execute that dash into that momentum forward, blah blah blah. But I think that's, again, if it's something that only extremely high skill players can do, and you know, it's something that you know, you can only do on one platform easily, it needs to be changed, right? But the main thing is it doesn't fit the idea, the class identity, so to speak, right? Now, I do have a counter to, you know, obviously nerfing it. So a lot of Warlocks would be very salty if Bungie did that, but I do have an idea that Bungie could do to kind of buff it in a way as well. And that is, if you have Heat Rises activated and you get kills while in the air, or you hit shots while in the air, right? You're hell, not even hitting shots. You activate Heat Rises. The longer you're in the air with Heat Rises active, you're slowly building up an Icarus dash meter, right? And you can Icarus dash at any point, right? I'm not saying we should take Icarus dash out of the game or only allow it to happen at certain times. No. But the longer you're in the air, the more powerful that Icarus dash becomes, right? So you float up in the air, right? You're in the air for 7 seconds. When you activate Icarus dash, because you start getting shot at, instead of going like that 5 meters, you go 7 meters, you know, or you know, 8 meters or 9 meters, or, you know, God forbid, let's say you're up in the air for 20 seconds and you activate Icarus dash. Icarus dash will launch you like 10, 12 meters out of the way very quickly. I think that would be a really neat like trade-off for it, because it would help. Obviously, being in the air is a really bad disadvantage, right? Especially because on the radar, which we'll talk about radar in a second, but when you're on the radar, everyone knows you're in the air. Like the radar literally changes if there's a Warlock that has Heat Rises floating in the air. You know, you become a little red circle, like screaming at everybody in the area, hey, here I am. This is me. I'm floating. Even when you're not in the air, like if you activate Heat Rises, you become a dot on the radar. That's insane, right? So being airborne is not exactly the safest. That's why I think that this change to Icarus Dash would benefit Warlock substantially, you know, because you're up in the air, you know, you're coming around cover, all of a sudden there's 3 or 4 enemies. Well, since you've been up in the air for 7 seconds, you get a much stronger, quicker burst to get back into cover. You know, aiming down sights, okay, I'm coming up around the corner. Oh my gosh, there's 4 guys right there. I'm about to get destroyed. Icarus Dash, boom, immediately. Almost like a blink. Like it is super, super fast out of the way, right? And again, that only gets stronger the longer that you're in the air. And I would say you could get to a point where once you've been in the air for X amount of time, Icarus Dash will start healing you, right? So you're up in the air for 20 seconds, right? You've got 3 kills while you're up in the air. You've been up there for 20, 30 seconds. Then all of a sudden, the 3 guys that you just killed, they spawn together, they come find you, they see you, they start shooting you. When you Icarus Dash, not only are you now launched 10 meters like quickly out of the way, but you're also healed like for 50, 60, 70 health points, right? Not full health, not health regeneration or anything like that, but you're healed that much just for being in the air, just for rewarding players for, hey, being in the air is good. Being in the air is what you should be doing. So here's, the longer you're in the air, the more you're going to be rewarded. That would be the other change I'd make to Icarus Dash. You know, again, take away the momentum that you can get with it so that players can't just run away from combat while they're on the ground, but make it so much stronger while in the air. Something that is it's already useful as is, but building into it even more, I think would really benefit Solar Warlock. But yeah, that's the changes I would make. I don't know. Again, I don't play Solar Warlock a whole lot, so these are kind of from a limited perspective on it here. But let me know what you guys think about it. Like, how do you feel about, you know, heat rises, extending the timer on heat rises? How do you feel about the Icarus dash changes? How do you feel about all the changes I proposed? Because I love reading y'all's comments and hearing y'all's thoughts about it. But with that being said, that's it for this video. Like if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more daily Destiny content and conversations like this one. And do me a favor, watch the video that you see on the end screen, because for whatever reason, YouTube thinks you'll like it. Guys, I'll see y'all next time.